I never believed my life would come down to the weight of a man's coin purse. But on a blistering July afternoon in Red Bluff, Texas, with dust coating my tongue and jeers stinging my ears, I stood on the warped steps of the Silver Spur Saloon, my father's hand clamped tight around my elbow, and realized he meant to sell me like a mule. The crowd was already gathered: miners with shirts stained in red clay, gamblers with their slick vests and sly grins, a gaggle of boys shouting for a fight they hoped to see. The sun pressed down like a branding iron, and the air smelled of sweat, whiskey, and horse dung. Jonas Whitmore, my father, shoved me forward as though presenting a side of beef. His face was as weathered as the land, his eyes hard with disappointment that I'd carried in my chest since I was a girl. "This here's Clara," he barked, his voice hoarse from too much rye. 22 years, and still no husband, no dowry, no purpose, useless as a busted plow. Who'll take her off my hands? A laugh cut through the heat low, mean, the kind of sound that made your skin prickle. Marlon Pike, the saloon boss, stepped out from the shade, his belly straining against a brown waistcoat, a toothpick dancing between his lips. His reputation traveled faster than whiskey cruel to his girls. It's quicker with his fists than his words. "I'll give you a whiskey coin for her," Pike drawled, spitting into the dirt. "Might put her to work scrubbing floors. Or something else." His grin was wolfish. Laughter erupted, harsh and hollow. One of the gamblers called out, "Don't know if she's worth even that." Another man shouted, "Best hope she can cook, Pike, or you'll starve on more than her sass." My cheeks burned hot, but not from shame, from rage. They saw only a woman without a dowry, without silken skin or submissive eyes. They didn't see me. My sharp tongue had always been my undoing. Now I bit it hard enough to taste copper, refusing to give them the satisfaction of tears. Father shoved me again. "Coin is coin. She's yours if you'll pay." I wanted to scream, to claw, to run. But my boots felt rooted to the boards, my throat clogged with dust and fury. That was when I saw him. He stood at the edge of the crowd, was quiet, almost part of the shadows. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a hat pulled low and a coat of worn leather that looked older than I was. His boots were scuffed, his jaw dark with stubble, and his eyes, when they lifted to meet mine, were steady as a river stone. He didn't smile. He didn't jeer. He simply watched, and then he stepped forward. "I'll take her." The crowd hushed. Pike's smirk faltered. Father blinked as if he hadn't heard right. The stranger tugged a worn pouch from his saddlebag and tossed it onto the saloon rail. The coins clinked heavy. "Winter's earnings," he said. His voice was gravel low, carrying no boast. "But she'll be no man's property." Gasps, murmurs. A drunk barked a laugh. But it sounded uneasy. He turned to me, not to my father, not to Pike, but to me. His gaze was steady, unflinching, and for the first time in my life, a man asked me a question without speaking it aloud. "You coming or not?" My heart rattled against my ribs. Behind me, Father hissed, "Don't you dare, Clara." Reuben, my brother, muttered curses thick as tar. Pike spat in fury, eyes flashing. The choice was mine. I stepped off the saloon porch, my skirts brushing the dust, and walked to the stranger's side without looking back. The crowd roared, some cheering, some jeering, but all shocked. Father cursed my name as though spitting it into the dirt. Reuben shouted that I'd regret this. Pike muttered dark promises under his breath. But I didn't stop. The stranger, Jack Hollister, I'd later learn, didn't touch me, didn't guide me. He only led the way to a mule, tethered by the hitching rail. He offered his hand to help me mount, but left it hanging until I chose to take it. For the first time in my life, I was free of my father's hand. We rode out of Red Bluff under the blazing sun, the town shrinking behind us. I didn't speak, afraid my voice would crack. Jack rode beside me, not ahead, as if we were equals, traveling the same road. Hours passed, the silence broken only by the creak of leather and the jingle of his spurs. At last he reached into his canteen and held it toward me. His hand was calloused, his eyes unreadable. "Drink," he said simply. I drank. The water cool and strange on my parched tongue. My throat ached with gratitude I dared not speak. By dusk, I reached a clearing near the Brazos River. A half-built ranch house stood there. Rough logs stacked, the roof open to the sky. Not much to look at, but it was more than I had ever owned. Jack dismounted, stretching his back with a grunt. "Ain't much," he admitted, "but it's honest work. You can stay or go back. Your choice." Choice. That word again. It felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. I chose to stay. That night, he spread his bedroll by the fire outside, leaving the small cot inside for me. No demands. No threats. Just quiet respect. I lay awake long after the prairie went dark, staring at the stars through the half-roof, the smell of pine smoke in my hair. My father's voice haunted me still, echoing that I was useless. Yet the echo didn't ring so loud here, where the air was clean and no one called me names for the first time in years. I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as worthless as they said. The first morning on Jack Hollister's land smelled of wet earth and pine. So different from the dust-choked alleys of Red Bluff. I woke to birdsong instead of curses, sunlight instead of smoke. For a long while I just sat on the cot inside that half-built cabin, staring at the rough log walls and the hole where a window might one day be. It wasn't much, but it was the first roof that felt like mine. When I stepped outside, Jock was already working. Sleeves rolled, sweat running down his neck. He split logs with steady precision, each swing of his axe sure and final. He didn't look up right away, didn't greet me with questions or orders, and somehow that was a kindness. I had lived my whole life under men's voices telling me what I was, what I wasn't, what I should be. His silence was freedom. Eventually he said, "You hungry?" and handed me a strip of jerky and half a biscuit wrapped in cloth. He ate after me as though I deserved to go first. No man had ever done that before. We settled into a rhythm of sorts. Jack showed me how to notch logs and set beams, how to haul stones from the river for the hearth. My hands blistered, my back ached, but each mark of sweat felt like a claim laid against the lie my father had branded into me. Useless, he had called me. Worthless. Yet here I was, building something that would outlast the sting of his words. At night, Jack kept to his fire outside, his low hum rising with the crackle of flames. Sometimes I caught him staring at the stars, his face carved in shadow, and I wondered what ghosts haunted him. He carried sorrow the way some men carried pistols, close, heavy, never far from reach. On the fourth evening, when the sky turned purple over the Brazos, I found the courage to ask, "Why did you take me?" His hands stilled on the wood he was carving. For a long while, he said nothing. Then, in that quiet gravel voice, "Because you looked like someone who still had fight in her. And I reckon fight deserves a chance," he told me later. About a wife named Leah and a boy with hair like sunlight, both taken by fever back in Abilene. He didn't cry. He didn't soften his tone. But grief lived in his words, steady as the ache in his hands. I felt it like a mirror pressed against my own heart. That night, I confessed that my father had burned my mother's journal in front of me, page by page, until the ashes floated out the chimney. He said it was foolishness, that women were born wrong for wanting words. Jack didn't say sorry. Instead, he fetched a board from his tool chest, carved my name into it, Clara, pressed it into my hands. "First thing that belongs to you," he said. I clutched it like a treasure. Days blurred into weeks. I planted wildflowers along the cabin's edge. Jack fixed the roof tight against rain. We were strangers still, yet not. Something slow and quiet stitched itself between us, like thread pulled through torn cloth. Then winter came. The sky turned iron. The wind carried knives, and snow piled against the door faster than we could shovel it away. Jack hunted daily, bringing back rabbit or deer when luck held. But luck doesn't stay long in Texas winters. One afternoon, he didn't return by dusk. The fire burned low, shadows creeping across the floor. I sat with my mother's memory whispering fear into my bones until finally I threw on Jack's spare coat and trudged into the storm. I found him by the tree line, half conscious, blood slick on his sleeve. A wolf, half dead and desperate, had torn into him before he put it down with his knife. He was shivering, teeth clenched, eyes glassy with pain. "I can't leave you out here," I said, though my voice cracked with terror. I dragged him back, God knows how, my muscles screaming, breath burning in my lungs. Inside the cabin, I stitched the gash with shaking hands, praying the thread would hold. His blood stained my palms, my skirts, the floorboards, but I didn't stop. For 3 days I fed him broth, stoked the fire, chopped wood until blisters opened anew. The storm howled, rattling the cabin, but I would not let it take him. On the 3rd night, his fever broke. He woke, weak but alive, his eyes soft in the glow of lamplight. "You're tougher than any cowboy I ever rode with," he murmured. Voice rough as gravel, yet tender in a way that undid me. My throat burned, and for the first time since I was a child, I wept. Not because I was afraid, but because, in that moment, I knew I had become something my father swore I'd never be: strong, necessary, alive. Jack's hand brushed mine, tentative, careful. The fire cracked, the wind eased, and in the hush between us, I felt the world shift. I wasn't useless. I wasn't for sale. I wasn't broken. I was Clara Whitmore, and for the first time in my life, I was free. I learned soon enough that peace on the frontier was always fleeting, like morning mist burned away by the sun. For every day we stacked logs, planted wildflowers, or shared the quiet of our fire. Trouble lay crouched in the shadows, waiting to strike. I had begun to believe the Brazos cabin was a place apart from Red Bluff's cruelty. A world carved only for us. But fate is not so icily bargained with. We had gone into town for supplies: flour, lamp oil, nails, simple things, yet the weight of eyes followed me through the dusty streets. Women whispered behind gloved hands. Men tipped their hats with smirks that said more than words. To them, I was still Jonas Whitmore's daughter, the girl nearly sold on a saloon porch. They saw shame where I was building pride. Jack bore it in silence. Shoulders squared, but his hand brushed the butt of his Colt when the laughter lingered too long. He never said it aloud, yet I knew the name Marlin Pike still carried venom. Pike had not forgotten being shamed in front of half the town. We loaded the wagon and set out, sun hanging low like a blood-red coin. The road curled through a grove of mesquite, shadows lengthening. That was when I heard it, the sharp crack of a twig where no deer stirred. "Down," Jack muttered, eyes narrowing. The ambush came sudden as lightning. Gunfire split the air, bullets sparking against the wagon's frame. I dropped behind a barrel of flour, heart hammering, breath thick with dust. Jack returned fire, his revolver barking steady, measured shots. I caught a glimpse of them 3 men, scarves over their faces, horses restless beneath them. One bore Pike's brand, a twisted scar on his cheek. Fear swallowed me whole, yet instinct forced my hand steady. Jack's rifle lay near unloaded. My fingers shook as I dug for cartridges, fumbling them into the chamber. My mind screamed of all I could lose, yet something fiercer rose inside me. I would not cower. Not again. Jack fired, and one outlaw yelped, clutching his arm. The others cursed, spurring their mounts, retreating in a spray of dust and hooves. The silence afterward rang louder than the shots themselves. I crawled out from behind the wagon, rifle heavy in my arms, trembling so hard my teeth rattled. Jack's hand closed over mine, firm, grounding. His eyes searched mine not for weakness, but for truth. "You did good," he said. No flourish, no jest. Just simple, solid praise. And in that moment I believed him. The nights that followed were restless. Every crack of a branch in the dark made me start. Every gust of wind against the shutters felt like footsteps. Jack set extra traps around the cabin, sharpened his axe to a finer edge, yet his quiet grew heavier. He was carrying the weight of protecting me, though he would never admit it. Spring came in fits and bursts. The snow melted into wildflowers. The cabin walls stood strong, and the air smelled of earth and renewal. Yet inside me, a different storm brewed. One afternoon, while Jack mended tack, I rode alone into town, determined to prove to myself I could stand among those who once mocked me. At the bank, Mr. Colton, a gray-haired man with a sharp nose, leaned over the counter with a smile too wide. "You've a good head on your shoulders, Miss Whitmore," he said. "Ever think of honest work? Keeping ledgers, balancing accounts. Pays better than most men's wages." The offer hung in the air like a tempting breeze. I could earn my own money, stand apart from Jack, prove my worth not as his shadow, but as my own name. Yet as I rode back, the land stretched before me, our cabin, our fields, the place where my sweat mingled with his. When Jack handed me a carved map later that evening, showing every road that led from the Brazos to Red Bluff, his words were steady. "Freedom's yours, Clara, always." He would never hold me against my will. And because of that, I chose to stay. "This is my home," I whispered. And his silence was the kindest answer of all. But fate was not done testing us. It was near midnight, when the smell of smoke woke me. At first I thought it a dream, but then came the crackle, the roar, the furious light spilling through the cracks in the shutters. The barn was ablaze, flames clawing at the sky. I ran before Jack could stop me, skirts catching on brambles, lungs seared by smoke. Inside, the horses screamed, eyes wild, hooves kicking against the stalls. My body moved before thought, tore the latches free, slapped the flanks, shouting them out into the night. Smoke stung my eyes, coughed my throat raw. Yet I would not leave them. Jack burst in, cursing my name, his arm like iron around my waist. He dragged me through the haze just as the roof groaned and collapsed, sparks raining down like judgment. My hair singed, my lungs burned, but I lived. And in his arms, coughing against his chest, I knew I would never again doubt my worth. The barn was gone by morning, nothing but blackened beams and ash. We rebuilt together, shoulders aching, hands blistered, laughter breaking through the toil when a hammer missed its mark. The fire had taken much, but it gave us something to prove that together we could endure even ruin. Word spread, as word always does. Soon mothers brought children to the cabin, timid at first, asking if I might teach letters the way Jack had once taught me. At the rough-hewn table he built, I traced letters in chalk, while little fingers followed. Payment came in eggs, corn, even a quilt. The cabin grew louder, fuller, warmer. Miss Whitmore, they called me now. No longer useless, no longer for sale. Their voices carried respect that once felt impossible. Jack watched from the doorway, arms crossed, a faint smile tugging his lips. He never said much, but pride glimmered in his eyes like dawn. Seasons turned. Trouble did not vanish, but neither did hope. On a clear day by the river, under the shade of a sprawling oak, we spoke vows not written in books, but carved in our hearts. Ranchers stood witness. Children I'd taught clutched wildflowers. Neighbors who once sneered now nodded with respect. Jack's hand was warm in mine, rough with scars and work. My voice trembled, but the words were steady. You gave me a place to stand when the world said I was nothing. The crowd hushed. The river sang, and when his lips touched mine, I knew love was not chains or bargains, not coin exchanged on a saloon porch. Love was choice, freely given, fiercely kept. Our cabin, once a half-built refuge, became a home alive with laughter, learning, and the quiet strength of two souls who had refused to be broken. In the wild heart of the frontier, where loss and danger lingered, we found not just survival, but meaning. And that, I learned, is the greatest victory a person can claim in this unforgiving land.